like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind.
Visit StogieGeeks.com/Debonaire for a list of retailers who carry Debonaire cigars. Buy some today and get a little more Debonaire. Welcome back, everyone, to the Stogie Geeks Show. This is our Debonaire Ideal segment for this evening. Will is, of course, with us on the lines via Skype. And Mr. Steve Saka is still here in studio. And, Will, it's kind of some somber news that we've got to report this week. And I actually didn't know this happened until you mentioned it over email. So I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, so, normally, with a Debonaire Ideal segment and with a guest, I wouldn't be talking about someone from another company, but I think this is a unique and a special scenario. Carlos Fuente Sr. passed away on Friday night, and word started coming out, I'd say Saturday around late morning, that he had passed away, and it was indeed confirmed. I had heard at the trade show he wasn't doing well.
Mm-hmm.
But he was 81. We do hear that from time to time. Some of the older people in the cigar industry don't make it, so I didn't know quite the extent of things, obviously. And that's a personal thing. But when you look at icon in the industry, I mean, and that word's thrown out a lot. It's way overused, and this man was an icon. And I think, given that of all the podcasts, I mean, I feel comfortable saying we probably talk about the Fuente brand the most. I felt we really had to do something on this segment to kind of, pay some homage to him tonight.
Absolutely. It's always been one of my favorite brands. And you talk about some of the limiteds. I find it amazing that they do virtually no marketing. But
listen, the Fuente today is not the Fuente it began as. I mean, Fuente began as a small bundle manufacturer. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, I think Carlos Sr. bought the company from his father for $1. Mm-hmm. And I think they had like $1,000 in assets. I mean, it started as a very small family company, and they spent decades just hard work and dedication to grow it into the company it's become today. And I think that's the thing that everybody. He is just a stellar example of hard work and dedication, and doing the right thing will make you successful. Mm-hmm. And they're a great family, and they've always done things their own way, and they've never ever tried to profit off anybody else but their own hard work. And it's very hard to not have anything but an admirable feeling or sentiment or goodwill towards them and their company and their products. And it's a tragic loss. It is a very big loss for our industry, and God rest his soul.
Yeah.
And the Fuentes, as a company, as a family, have always given back a lot, too, in their various projects and some of the cigars we're familiar with. But if you read the backstory into that, like, they're really doing a ton of good in their own communities to help people based on a lot of those cigar charitable family foundation funds and all that stuff, too. So, not only starting out, growing the company, but when they grew to a certain point, they decided to give back, and that really speaks to their character. So,
you think, OpusX, I'm going to say, was more of a Carlito thing, where Carlito started experimenting with that Dominican wrapper. I mean, I'm sure his father was supporting him and behind, but, there was points where, and I was kind of just going back reflecting on his life. He took a lot of risks, Fuente Sr., Don Carlos. It was interesting, and he apparently was in Cuba before the embargo went down, and I guess he had a gut feel that they were going to embargo the tobacco. He went and bought 3 years worth of Cuban tobacco to have a supply, and then people went to him to try to buy that tobacco, and he said, "No, I'm not doing that." Then at the same time, he started thinking ahead. what did he have to do once the Cuban tobacco ran out?
Right.
And so that's what he did. Other examples, when he brought Hemingway in the 80s, that was, I mean, he brought back that, from what I understand, he brought back that Perfecto type size, which really had disappeared from the U.S. market, especially after the Cuban cigars left. So he kind of brought that back as well. So there were a lot of things he did. He
made quintessential blends too. Like earlier when we were talking about cigars that I smoke. I mean, I always have no less than maybe 3 or 4 boxes of Don Carlos in my humidor.
Yeah.
And I mean, Don Carlos number 4.
40 years old. That brand's 40 years old, I believe.
That's a mainstay in my humidor. It's a cigar that I still reach into the box and I smoke. And
I smoked a Hemingway Classic on my way into work today. We were doing this segment and everything. It's just such a staple.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah. I mean, so it was. He did. Even when he went to. He had bad luck too. In Central America, he went to Central America in the late 70s because the costs of making cigars in Tampa were too high. And this is before he went to the Dominican Republic. So he goes to Nicaragua, and then what happens is the Nicaraguan Revolution comes. They burn down his factory, and he basically has to flee the country. Meanwhile, he had a place in Honduras that also then burns down. So, I mean, they've endured a lot of struggles. And, then in the 80s, they went to the Dominican Republic, and I think that's where they really that's where they started to get more vertically integrated and things like that. So there was amazing stories that you just hear. And he was 7 decades in the industry. I mean,
Les Mann from Calibri came on the show a few months ago and told a story about Carlos Sr. He said, they have this big room in the basement. I don't know if it was in Tampa or the Dominican where they're warehousing all their cigars, or storing their cigars, and they had no hygrometer in the room whatsoever. They had these tobacco leaves hanging right in the room. Yeah. And Carlos Sr. would go up and he'd squeeze and touch the leaves, and he'd adjust the humidity in the room according to how he would.
I can understand how that's possible.
Yeah.
Sure.
I thought that was that's a story that sticks out in my mind. I always think of that as I'm struggling with my own humidors. Like, this man had so much knowledge and experience that, that's how he did it. So.
And the other thing, too, is you really didn't have an option. It wasn't like you could go buy a digital hygrometer that was accurate in 1954 to put in your room. It just didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
So, feeling a Gavia hanging from the ceiling would be a much more accurate way to measure the humidity.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's a really good point, yeah. I mean, and he had a street name recently named after him in Tampa, Ybor City. I don't think anyone in the cigar industry I could think of has a street named after him. Steve may have one eventually, but
no, in New Hampshire.
Never going to be compared to Don Carlos. That's a much different league.
Yeah.
Well, I smoked some more Fuentes this week. And I love, speaking of limiteds, those are ones I'd love to collect. And I mean, because they all just age so well. I'll talk about a couple of them in our next segment as well. But, I've personally bought some that have just been, the ones special in the tubes that come with an ashtray.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's one of the cigar in the bottle is one of the most amazing cigars I've ever smoked in my entire life. Of course, Casa Fuente has been a staple in Las Vegas every time we go out there. Even in my own security community outside the cigar community, that's a place where there's a number of us that gravitate towards that shop, and we buy all the limited rare things in there and smoke them. So we get to share it with other people in my community. And that's all because of the Fuente family.
Yeah. Wait till you see the OpusX 20th anniversary that come. I'll have to send you the picture.
Yeah, you said something about that recently, Will.
Oh my! Yeah, well, I was on a podcast and they asked me the cigar I wanted to smoke the most that I didn't have at the show, and for me, that was just a no-brainer. I mean, looking at that cigar sight alone, if we ever can get a box of that,
so.
yeah, I have a picture I took of it. I did get over to. I actually spent some more time in the Fuente booth this year. It was a higher priority, and the Newman booth, and I did, so. And they had those two families have a very, very strong relationship too. So,
and Fuentes had a strong year in the past year in terms of releases. Will and I talked about that. We review between the two of us in any given year. The number's got to be up around 700 different cigars, right?
That's a lot.
And the Fuentes they place at least 2 in like our respective top 10 lists.
That's great.
And have some of the highest rated cigars.
That's not surprising. They're
great,
a lot of great tobacco men.
Yeah.
And they're great cigar makers, and they can't rush the hands of time. It's more than just a slogan.
Yeah, it's a tougher brand actually where I am to get hold of a lot of those. I mean, you can get hold of the core stuff. I mean, but some of that Uber stuff, I know, Paul, you have a little more access to it. And when I was actually a listener of Stogie Geeks, it was kind of one of those brands that I really learned about from the guys at the time.
That's actually, I will join the show and merge just so that I can now send him the rare limited releases to review.
Although I did get you the Mia Moore. I did get you the single Mia Moores. So
That's right. Yeah. You did buy that box of those.
I did buy the box of those, and that is a fantastic cigar that pays tribute to their 100-year anniversary.
Well, we look forward to the Fuente legacy living on.
Oh, it's definitely going to live on.
They're in good hands with Carlito, I think. I mean,
and Cynthia. Don't forget Cynthia.
Cynthia too. Yeah.
It's a family company, and I don't see it. I don't
built
see
it
any
into
reason.
one of the largest family companies in the industry too. So
it is the largest family company. In the
it is.
industry.
Yeah. So obviously, thoughts and prayers with the whole family in this difficult time. Yeah.
Amen.
With that, we are going to take a short break, come back, and talk about all the cigars that we've been smoking recently. So stay tuned.